Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tapped in Sports. I got Splash Cousin as well as Pasquini Andrew down here. Andrew, you're getting a little pumped up for that intro there, weren't you?
Oh yeah, no. So the StreamYard countdown music is a banger, and then just to add on, I'm amped. I'm ready to go. I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready for Week 17 now.
Got it. Bills Mafia, right, for Week 17, I guess, since the 49ers are out of the playoff picture.
There's or Bills Mafia
doing it for Josh Allen.
Yes.
Since he grew up a 49er fan. So if you guys are tuned in here, as you can see, the final score from Saturday, I almost said yesterday, but from Saturday, it was 20-12. The San Francisco 49ers, Santa Clara, Arizona 49ers went ahead and beat Arizona. They said, hey, thanks for letting us use your facility, tear up that grass field. Oh, and by the way, we're going to knock you out of the playoffs while we do it. And so now we're sitting here with the 49ers at 6-9. They dropped a couple spots in the NFL draft. If you're one of those avid saying, hey, lose out. But if they're going to win, I'm going to say go 49ers. I'm not going to avidly choose for them to lose just to, get a higher draft pick. If they're winning, great. I'm all for that success. And to get into the injuries really quick that Shanahan said in his press conference, Brandon Ayuk, the star rookie for the 49ers, he's going to miss Week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's someone that probably could have took out Jerry Rice's rookie record. What do you think, Gordon? If he played 16 games, obviously, and you're muted.
I think he definitely could have. I think that Ayuk, the fact that he was able to demonstrate his abilities with subpar QB play from Mullins, he really didn't get much time with CJ. He had a couple games with Jimmy, but it was apparent that he was the best wide receiver on the field. And I mean no disrespect to Deebo Samuel. Deebo is a great player as well. But in my opinion, Ayuk is just so much more of a well-rounded player. I think their abilities contrast and complement each other very well. Deebo is obviously very physical. But the thing that really stands out to me with Ayuk is his balance. His footwork and his route running is very good. That's something he can improve on. But you can't really teach inherent balance. And the way that this guy is able to stay on his feet when he's getting hit, when he's cutting in and out of breaks, when he's going up and showing that very impressive catch radius, the balance for me is a huge thing because that's a trait that, again, you can work on, but it's really hard to have that, be something that you go from being average to elite in. You kind of need to just possess that skill. And it's been very clear for me from day one that along with his big catch radius, the balance for me is what's really standing out. I think he has wide receiver 1 written all over him.
Same. I think I hold him to that same standard as well. I think he has wide receiver 1 written all over him. Someone I actually compared him to before he took a snap in the NFL is Stephon Diggs. So it makes it even more interesting that we bring the Bills into this conversation one more time, and that's probably the final time we will. But he's just someone that I believe, like Diggs has some yak ability. He has that finesse style like Ayuk. Diggs isn't that Deebo Samuel type of yak receiver. And they're both fantastic out route running. So as well as the other guys who's going to miss is Trent Williams, K'Wan Williams. We saw him basically hold his shin a couple of times. It was shin contusion. Shanahan said that he's going to be a go. Jordan Willis, he's going to be someone who's going to miss Week 17 as well. But as far as a game ball for Saturday's matchup, Andrew, who are you giving the game ball to?
Oh man, that's a good question because there's 6 or 7 guys I feel like very much earned it. I feel the obvious answer is Jeff Wilson just for his game on the ground. You could argue Kyle Juszczyk for his 2 touchdowns. CJ Beathard, probably the biggest stat of the game, 1 turnover. I mean, that's really why the 49ers won the game. It wasn't that they were explosive on offense by any sense. So you could argue Beathard. I'm going to go Fred Warner just because I think the biggest play in the game and the one that stood out to me was the Cardinals' attempt on 4th down where they tried to hit that slant route to Hopkins, and they were hitting it fairly consistently throughout the game. That was kind of their go-to play the entire time. The other one was the option of just Kyler running the ball, which he's going to do. Just for the play of him knowing what play was coming, stepping in, knocking down that 4th down, I think they have scored a touchdown and got a field goal off that drive. One of the two. I think it was it was a touchdown. I'm just going to go Freddie Warner. He was all over the place that game. I think he had 14 tackles, and to me, he had the biggest play of the game. So I'm going to go the opposite of the obvious Jeff Wilson. I'll give you guys Jeff Wilson. I'll take Fred Warner.
No, that's fantastic. I think you mentioning that fourth down stop basically had me convinced as well. That was a hell of a play, and that was a smart play. I think they said it during the broadcast. They were not good at the broadcast, but at least they digested that one pretty well. It's Fred Warner saw he wasn't going to get home, so he dropped back and he knew what was coming basically. And I think that attests to how smart of a player Fred Warner is. He just wanted to get his hands up because he knew that Hopkins was going to come right behind him. Who do you got, Jordan?
I have one that might not be very popular for people because he did have a couple of plays that weren't very flattering, but I'm going with Big Mike McGlinchey. If you watch a lot of those plays that they ran to the outside and the holes that were getting open for Jeff Wilson, it was because of Mike McGlinchey, who along with Trent Williams is the top-rated tackle for run blocking grade, according to PFF. And I know people don't like that he's getting blown up in pass protection. He's ending up on the ground, and we're seeing all these low lights. But the way that this guy is able to create holes when they're running to the outside and the pass that he's blazing for running backs in the running game, like the value can't be understated. And I think that it's so easy to dump on a guy when he's getting blown up in pass protection. But that's kind of always who Mike McGlinchey's been. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's funny because it's not, but it's funny. It is in a way that people are just kind of acting like this happened all of a sudden. Like that's who Mike McGlinchey's been for 3 years, but he doesn't get enough credit for what he does in the run game. And if I recall, the 49ers did get over 200 yards rushing. I know Jeff Wilson ended up with like a $180, $183, something like that. And a large portion of that credit should go to the offensive line. But specifically, I want to give Mike McGlinchey a shout out because the little tape that I have been able to watch since Saturday, he really did stand out. And I think that as somebody who's been dumped on all season, he does deserve credit where credit is due. And he's my player of the game for blazing a path for that rushing attack led by the touchdown machine himself.
Right. So everyone is going to say Jeff Wilson Jr. We had a few people here in the comments. And I'm going to let them have it. Like Jeff Wilson Jr. Okay, so that's going to be the viewers' selection. Just because I want to give something a little more than Jeff Wilson, that's 180 yards. It's obvious. Yes, he's up for the ground game player of the week. So I'm going to say Ahkello Witherspoon. And I'm going to say it in this aspect because of that first possession for Arizona where he basically got pushed off of. It was offensive pass interference. And I'm going to state it as that because that's what they stated it on Kittle as in the Super Bowl. But what we've seen from Ahkello in the past is once a play like that happens, it just goes downhill fast for Ahkello. He loses his confidence. He's kind of not completely there mentally. But that didn't happen this time. And he looked to retain his confidence, continue to play at a high level, have third down stops, get the Cardinals off the field, had an interception in the red zone. Granted, it was not a great pass, but we've seen in the past to where even if it wasn't a great pass, Ahkello still didn't make the play. This time he was. And he looks like a kid that is hungry, that's playing for a second contract in the NFL. I don't believe it's going to be the 49ers just because of the history. Some people like fresh starts and just want to get outside of that same organization. I respect that, and I understand that. Look at yourself in a personal level. Sometimes you may have a decent job, but you want to get out of that. You're searching on Indeed. You're searching on all these other hiring websites just because you want a new situation. And I think that's going to be that situation with Ahkello. So the fact that he just didn't fold and say, it is what it is. Same story. No, he battled, and he wasn't playing against scrub receivers. He wasn't playing against the Browns who had their practice squad receivers up. No, he had DeAndre Hopkins as well as whatever. I'm blanking on his name.
Christian Kirk.
There you go. And Christian Kirk he's not, one of the league's tops, but he is a better than average receiver. I'd say the biggest thing with Kirk is probably his drops, but he's a better than average receiver. So I shout out Ahkello Witherspoon for fighting on that and showing some dog this time and not just folding.
Yeah.
And so the next topic we're going to get into is going to be about Jeff Wilson Jr. Like I said, that this is kind of why I didn't touch on it immediately.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson Jr., he's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of this year's, season. The 49ers have his rights to where they could either put a tender on Jeff Wilson Jr. How that works is it would be a first round tender, which is about $3.5 million, a second round tender, which is about $3 million, or a original round tender, which Jeff Wilson Jr. was an undrafted free agent. So that's basically not even an option, because if they tag that onto Jeff Wilson Jr., then a team could get Jeff Wilson Jr. for free. Basically, they don't have to give up any assets. They could just outright sign him, because you can't give anything in return for an undrafted free agent if that's the original round. And does he deserve to either get that second round tender onto him, or should the 49ers look at a 2-year extension, which that's what guys usually get, is 2-year deals, players like Jeff Wilson Jr. What do you think? Not what they should do or what you think they're going to do. What do you think they're going to do? If you were John Lynch, what are you giving him? Are you giving him that tender, or are you going to give him a 2-year extension? Obviously, if he turns down a 2-year extension, you're going to slap on that tender. But what would you do in that situation?
For me, the 2 years is probably the easiest option. You give him a little bit stability. You probably get him not as expensive as a lot of guys. I don't think he's going to be running a bunch of money. He's not going to be asking for a ton of money. I think 2 years for Jeff Wilson, because for me, I've heard it talked about, is would you rather have Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert as your running back one? I just say yes. I really think the Niners, especially at the start of the Lynch-Shanahan era, they've gotten burned on running backs with bad contracts. Obviously, the two names that come up is Tevin Coleman and Jerick McKinnon, and not that they're not good or anything. It's just they haven't performed to what the 49ers dished out. The 49ers have a chance to have 2 number 1 caliber running backs for relatively cheap. I think the 2-year option, or the 2-year contract, is probably the best option. At worst, you're obviously going to slap a second round, or whatever they decide to slap on him for it. To me, I think easy 2-year extension right off the bat. He's proven that if he's healthy, he somehow has the most explosiveness in the backfield with Raheem Mostert. I think Raheem Mostert has the best big play ability, but if you're looking for an 8-yard chunk at a time, I think Jeff Wilson's your guy. He's going to consistently, I feel like I trust him more to get 8 yards on a play than I do Raheem Mostert. So for me, 2-year extension over the restricted free agent tender.
Yeah, so I'm with Andrew 100%. As of right now, the second round tender, I believe, is a 1-year, $3.259 million deal, or 110% of the player's prior base salary. His base salary this year was $750K, so it definitely would be that $3.2 million. I think that Jeff is worth slightly less than that on an annual basis. I'd go somewhere 2 years, $4 million, maybe. I'd give him somewhere in the ballpark of 1.75. I definitely would work in some incentives. If he ends up working a bigger load, I think he's definitely capable of it. But I think the 49ers would be in a very good position with himself and Mostert, because Mostert excels running to the outside. He has such good vision hitting those holes. We all know how fast he is. Mm-hmm. But what Wilson brings, he's talked recently about his dark place and, that place he goes to before the game when he runs angry. He's the only back on the roster, other than, if you count Juszczyk's in there too. But he's the only back out of the, pure running backs that I trust to run vertically, that will run through defenders, that can get you a yard or two in short yardage situations. No offense to Mostert. I don't think that's his game. Mostert is a great running back, but I think that they complement each other so well. And it'll be easy with a player like Tevin Coleman and a player like McKinnon with his restricted, with those guys off the books and probably not coming back. It'd be very easy to absorb, $1.5 million, 1.75, something like that a year with some incentives worked into it. I just wouldn't give the 3.2 because I don't see anybody really giving up a second round pick for Jeff Wilson. No offense. I'm as big a Jeff Wilson fan as you'll find, but anybody who follows me knows running backs really aren't that valuable from a capital standpoint, in my opinion. If you're giving up a second round pick, it better be a player that's damn good. I think they did the same thing with Breida, and if I recall correctly, the compensation back for Miami was a 5th. It wasn't a second. Miami was willing to give up a 5th round pick, but they're not giving up a second. They can always use it as a tactic to move him, but if it's me, I'm not moving Jeff Wilson. I love what he brings to the team, and I think he's also again, I don't count Juszczyk because Juszczyk's kind of a utility fullback. Yeah, I don't consider him a pure running back. Out of all the running backs, I trust Wilson catching the ball more than any of them. He's demonstrated an ability to go up and get the ball in big pressure situations. We saw in the Super Bowl, right before halftime. We saw the angle route, the Texas route he ran against the Cardinals this past weekend. He just has a skill set that it's going to be hard to find somebody that's familiar with the system, that knows the locker room, that's, well liked by the players for all, I haven't seen anything to the contrary. It's too good of a value to pass up. I would pony up, pay the guy his money. He's earned a nice pay bump. Nothing too, significant, but I would be comfortable going from that 750, doubling it to around 1.5, 1.6 million a year.
Yeah, I would be on the same boat. I'm glad you brought up the Matt Breida situation because that's something I related to. They were both undrafted free agents. So you cannot slap a original round tender on them. If Jeff Wilson was a 6th round, 7th round pick, yeah, you can do that. No one's going to give up a 2nd round pick for Jeff Wilson Jr. So you're kind of overpaying the guy with that $3.25 million. When you look at running back contracts, as far as second year contracts for not second year, but second contract in the league for guys that aren't instant RB1s on teams, Tevin Coleman had a way better resume than Jeff Wilson Jr. Whether you think Jeff Wilson Jr. is better currently than what Tevin Coleman was in Atlanta, that's your personal decision. But as far as resume goes, to 32 other front offices, Coleman had the higher resume. He signed a 4-year deal. I believe Jordan Howard signed he signed a $4 million per year deal. That's what Tevin Coleman signed with the 49ers. And I believe Jordan Howard signed for the same type of deal. So I'm going to look at that and say Jeff Wilson's probably a $2 million, at most 2.5. So instead of instantly giving him a $3.2 million contract, you could probably shed $1 million. And that's what the 49ers are going to need. Look at this season. They barely was able to keep it afloat. So if you hang around Jeff Wilson and say, hey, 2 years, $5 million, you could probably give him $2 million year 1 and then whatever year 2. And that works out better for the team. And if he doesn't want to sign that, then yeah, you could throw the 2nd round tender on him. I think you got to put both on the table. And I think Jeff Wilson has earned the trust to be at least $2.5 million on the books for the next 2 years. Despite the other guys they never resign, I know he has fumble issues. I believe that's something he can correct. That just happens with certain guys, and then all of a sudden you don't see it for a few years. So I think he has earned the trust to where, hey, if Mostert's out and you're the dog carrier of this game and you got to take 15, 20 carries, like he can do it 100%. So that's something I would be looking at for Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah, and I think too, real quick, I don't mean to interject. I think too, the nice thing with having Mostert and Wilson, sharing a backfield too, it makes it easier on Shanahan to really manage a workload in terms of running back. So he's not picking one, because I think both of them do different things well. And I really do see a scenario in 2021 where Shanahan says, hey, the feature back this week, it's going to be Wilson. Mostert's going to come in specific packages. The next week, it could be totally opposite, right? Mostert's going to be the feature back. Wilson's going to come into certain packages. And I trust both of them to be consistent enough. So just from the sense of having both of them on the team at whatever price it is, there's going to be value there.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and touch with the quarterback. I don't think we need to get too much into the quarterback situation. We have a ton of days, ton of hours, ton of weeks before the upcoming draft, before moves have to be made, before training camp. I don't want to really take away a lot of that ammo and bore you guys out and talk about that for every single day. But what I would like to talk about is, did CJ Beathard's performance prove a rookie can lead this team into a winning season next year? because I'll let you go ahead and take the thunder on this, Andrew, from your tweet that you sent yesterday about the significance of his performance from Saturday.
Yeah, so he, as you politely told me, he was the 8th quarterback in 49ers. I put 13, but I told you how many times each one of them did. I knew what I meant, and that's important to me. CJ Beathard became the 8th 49ers quarterback to have a game in which, less than 200 yards passing, 3 or more touchdown passes, and exactly 0 interceptions. It's only happened 8 times, 13, or it's happened with 8 different quarterbacks 13 different times. The 49ers are 13-0 in those games, and it's one of those stats where it means nothing, right? I picked arbitrary numbers and threw it out there. It was more of a curiosity for me thing more than statistic reason. I don't know if his performance necessarily proves a rookie can lead the 49ers to a winning season. I think what it proves, and I'm going to try and make an analogy here, and we'll see where it goes. Nick Mullins in this offense is a car, okay? No gas, no anything. He turns the ball over a lot. That's right. What it is, and it doesn't work because he turns the ball over. The idea of Nick Mullins is fine in this offense. The turnovers is what kills him. So Nick Mullins with the turnovers is a car with no gas, no anything. CJ Beathard's performance is he didn't turn the ball over. You get a car and you get some gas. No really bells or whistles to it, but he's not going to do anything that makes you jump out of your seat and be like, oh my God, Beathard's here. Other than maybe his 16-yard option run, which that's when you know Kyle Shanahan is feeling himself in the run game, is when he's running option plays for 16 yards with CJ Beathard. What it proved yesterday is how important it is to not turn the ball over in this offense. It wasn't the perfect game in terms of an offensive performance because it was less than 200 yards. You want a quarterback who can do more than that, but it proved what not turning the ball over. Now, it depends what rookie you're getting. Trevor Lawrence obviously is quarterback number 1 in this draft. Let's face it, he's not coming to the 49ers, but Trevor Lawrence probably makes this team better because what he adds is the explosive playability. So at least the idea of what Trevor Lawrence is. We don't know what Trevor Lawrence, the pro, looks like. If we're taking what Trevor Lawrence, the college player, is and putting him in the Niners offense, he offers that explosive playability. And what that is it's the car with the gas, with all the bells and whistles to make that thing go 120 miles in 4 seconds. So it really, to me, it depends what rookie you're putting in there. I don't think a Kyle Trask is going to be explosive enough for this offense. Maybe Mac Jones, maybe not. Zach Wilson, maybe. I know I got some people mad about a Zach Wilson trade. Zach Wilson might have that. I think he's the only guy in this draft worth trading up for to find out if he's explosive enough. Trey Lance might be that guy, but you're not trading up for Trey Lance. I think it just really comes down to big playability, how well it works in the offense, because Beathard's performance doesn't prove a rookie can win. It proves that not turning the ball over can make this a competent offense that can move the ball.
Got it. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. I enjoyed every second of that.
I don't know cars well enough to make a fancy car comparison, but CJ Beathard's a car with gas, no bells and whistles. Nick Mullins is just a car with no gas. And Matt Stafford / any explosive quarterback is a Ferrari that can go 120 miles per hour in 4 seconds.
Yeah, I did like what Dylan said here is Nick Mullins is like a 99 Honda Civic, or like Dylan's 99 Honda Civic.
Yes. Yeah, very, very, very much so. It really comes down to, like, people want to talk about Shanahan's coaching ability this season. Look how different the offense looked when they weren't turning the ball over 3 times, 4 times a game. One turnover, and that was enough for this defense to hold. That's all it took. If you go back and make a handful of games the past 6 weeks, a 1 turnover game, Nick Mullins probably has looked a lot different right now. That's really what it is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead and touch on it. I think what he's illustrated was pretty good. No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I'm in agreement with Andrew totally. Anybody who knows me, I always like to throw in some numbers. Eye test is great, and it's always good to see numbers and then get a clarification as to why they may be what they are. And there has been one instance where Kyle Shanahan has been calling plays for a first-round rookie that was traded up for, that was a coveted prospect that had all the tools. It's been pretty well documented. It was 2012 with RG3 for the Washington football team. That year, they made the playoffs. They had a decent team, but they had a bottom 15 defense. They weren't really great at skill position players. Their leading receiver was 49ers fans. Remember, Josh Morgan led the team in receptions. They weren't awful, but they definitely didn't have anywhere near the skill position group that the 49ers do with a Brandon Ayuk, with the Deebo Samuel, with the George Kittle. And yet that year, Robert Griffin led an offense that finished second in efficiency in terms of offensive EPA per play. They were the second most efficient offense in the league, only behind the New England Patriots. And it was by a fairly wide margin as well. The 49ers were close with them too. Everyone remembers that was the year that Smith got benched for Kaepernick and the run game took off. But Kyle took a rookie quarterback and he had him not only succeed, but was extremely efficient. And Andrew touched on it with the turnovers. Efficiency is what you need from Kyle. He's going to give these guys so many looks that ultimately the system will kind of work for the player more than the players will work. Like, you need good players. I'm not downplaying the significance of talent, but the system's going to do a lot of the legwork for them. So when you get a guy that's able to execute within that system and stay efficient, you also get the benefit of the plus tools. Like he's talking about, you get that Ferrari that's going to come in. That's, hey, you know what? Kyle Shanahan's a great coach, but is he going to get guys open on every single play? No, those defensive coordinators on the other side get paid big money too. So when you get a guy that's able to extend plays and improvise and do things on their own, and then they're also able to play within the system and be efficient the way we know Kyle can set up his players. Like, no offense to CJ Beathard did a phenomenal job. He won the game on Saturday. He didn't really do anything that you would point to that was a play he made that won them the game. But within the structure of the offense, he didn't have a stupid turnover. He didn't do anything that ultimately cost them. But if you get a guy that's like ultimately, you're not going to have that opportunity every week, though, is my biggest thing. Is there's going to be defenses that are going to be very tough to go against, that are going to be able to slow down the screens and the slants and the motions and the fly sweeps and all the cool stuff that Kyle does on offense. Eventually, you're going to need a guy that's going to be able to sit there in a high-pressure moment, throw a ball downfield, throw outside the numbers, do something, extend a play when the play breaks down, when the offensive line, misses a block. You're going to need somebody that can do that. And that same year that Kyle had the offense as a whole was the second most efficient, 2 rookie quarterbacks finished in the top 5 in efficiency just for singling out quarterback play. It was Robert Griffin III at 5 and then Russell Wilson at 4. And I know everybody's like, oh, Russell Wilson's don't grow on trees. But 2012 Russell Wilson is a hell of a lot different than 2020 Russell Wilson. And he had Darrell Bevell calling his plays, not Kyle Shanahan. And he was still able to post high efficiency numbers because he worked within the system. He was able to make defenses respect the deep ball over the top. And that ultimately gave the run game, we all know Marshawn Lynch, how good he was. It gave the run game the ability to operate without the defensive stack in the box. So I think, I don't want to keep going, and ranting, but yes, the short answer is yes. This system is built perfectly for a guy to come in, do what he needs to do, nothing too crazy. He's obviously going to have to pick it up. It's not just the simple thing, but it's definitely not too complicated for a rookie to do. I think Kyle has, I don't want to say dumbed down because that sounds, kind of offensive, but he's vanillaed the offense quite a bit from what he's capable of running. If you look at Atlanta in 2016, and you look at San Francisco in 2019, it's very far off. And, like Jason's saying, like the playbook now, like Shanny's evolving every year as a play caller. And I think that if it's a high first round rookie that they trade up for, my confidence is very high. If it's somebody that they get in the later rounds, I may not feel as good about a rookie coming in right away to doing it. I think they could be capable of doing so, but just like Andrew said, if it's a Zach Wilson, if it's, like a Trey Lance, I'm kind of worried about starting day one, but if it's a Zach Wilson, if it's a Justin Fields, someone like that, I would have no issue with them coming in day one, and I don't think that there would be any hindrance to the offense as a whole.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to bring up this question, is because the hot take basically is, a rookie can't take his team to the Super Bowl. A rookie could barely take his team to the playoffs. Well, yeah, it's never happened. So that's why people never won a Super Bowl. That's why people are going to make that take. Okay, I understand that. But it's not too often that a rookie takes over a Super Bowl contending roster. And that's what I see the 49ers as. It's a Super Bowl contending roster. And what do you know? The quarterback finally didn't throw an interception for the first time since week 6. Didn't throw an interception, and the 49ers won. The defense held Arizona to 12 points. And yeah, Kyler Murray is dealing with injuries, but he was able to put up points on about everybody else. The Philadelphia Eagles, they're not that bad on defense when they played Arizona 2 weeks ago. And Kyler Murray lit them up. Kyler Murray lit up the Dolphins. Kyler Murray lit up the Bills. He's been, even though he hasn't been 100% healthy, he's still lighting it up. And the fact that the 49ers defense held him to 12 points without a Nick Bosa, with the Kello starting at the other corner spot, without Jimmy Ward, without another significant edge rusher like D4 to at least have 20 snaps a game, and without Javon Kinlaw, this team is ready to go back into contending next year. And I think if you put in a Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, those are kind of the two more common names that the 49ers may be in play for. I think they could do what CJ Beathard did on Saturday and then some. Because like you said, Jordan, what happened on Saturday is not going to be every single game of the season. It's not going to be playoffs. That's one of those weeks where you just take advantage of it, and you take advantage of that opportunity where your defense is playing lights out and your quarterback's not turning over the ball. The 49ers took advantage of that and got out of that game with the win. But if they were in a situation where they needed to have more of an elevated quarterback play, yeah, I think Trey Lance can do that. Reason being is Shanahan's calling the plays. There's been a ton of times we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo or Nick Mullins on film, and there's guys open. Shanahan will get guys open. Obviously, a rookie is in a struggle with the reads, just like a veteran would. But it did show me that, hey, Shanahan beat the freaking Cardinals, an 8-6 team that was in the playoffs, with CJ Beathard, with no Deebo Samuel, no Raheem Mostert. I trust Shanahan as a head coach to have his team right if it is a rookie leading them next year. You're winning. You won 4 games with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. Yeah, they can definitely do it, and I wouldn't shy away from that. Especially, I would imagine that they're going to add pieces in this offseason. D Ford is a contract you could get rid of and add another piece if you have to. So I think they can. You guys illustrated it greatly. I don't need to go more in context with it, so I'll leave it at that.
Can I add one thing real quick though? I just want to point out, because you made a point earlier that I love, that about how people say that a rookie quarterback has never won the Super Bowl, and just like you were saying, the 49ers have a much better team in place. Generally, if you're starting a rookie right away, it's because you have no better options, or your team was so terrible that you're picking a high-end guy coming out of college in the top 10 picks. But I would like to point out that in the past 15 years, there have been 3 quarterbacks whose team ultimately won a Super Bowl in their second season, with 2 of them trading up. The Steelers got Ben Roethlisberger in 2004 at pick 11. I don't know if the 49ers will get that high. I think they'll be somewhere between 12 and 15. Depending on what happens this week, they could get to 10. So somebody like Roethlisberger with a good defense and a stout run game got them a Super Bowl the second year. And then obviously you have Carson Wentz and you have Patrick Mahomes, who both were traded up for by their respective teams. They went up and they got these guys. The rookie years, Mahomes, obviously, his rookie year, he didn't play much. But if we're counting the years where he was actually on the field, year 1, he wins MVP. Year 2, he wins a Super Bowl. Everybody dumps on Carson Wentz. But Carson Wentz was the major reason that the Eagles had home field advantage in those playoffs. Yeah. I don't think they get by Atlanta if they're playing Atlanta on the road in the divisional round. People forget because they thumped the Vikings and they beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. I think they won like 15-9 against Atlanta in the divisional round. So there is precedent for a rookie to come in and have success. It may not be the first year right away, but in year 2, like if you're telling me right now the Niners get a guy and they don't win the Super Bowl next year, but they have a shot to win it the next year and the year after and the year after, sign me up for the decade of continuity over going all in on another year and putting all your eggs in a basket. Like we saw how that worked out this year. And it just, I would much rather have the long-term upside, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. And Russell Wilson, he was on a rookie contract.
He was a second year too, I believe. His second year, yes. That's another one. Yeah, second year.
The Eagles won the Super Bowl because they were able to afford Foles because Wentz was on a rookie contract.
Mm-hmm.
These guys keep doing it. When Goff went, I believe he was on a rookie contract. He didn't get paid yet. It was after the Super Bowl. Patriots had this greatness of success because Tom Brady was taking discounts at the quarterback position. He was not making top dollar. He was not making $30 million a year. He was not even making $20 million a year a lot of the time there in New England. You're not going to have that with every quarterback. You're not. So that's the reason why they were able to keep that success for so long. I think you got to take advantage of the rookie contract just because of what you've been seeing in the success with guys on rookie contracts. Like you said, even if he doesn't win it his rookie year, they could still compete. They could still contend. If he wins it year 2, year 3, year 4, whatever it may be, sign me up for that. If he's going to be there young for the next 15 years, 10 years, sign me up for that. But we have a lot of time to talk about quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and just jump to extend or let him go. We have 3 different pairs here.
Okay.
That you got to decide to. So the first pair is going to be fullback Kyle Juszczyk, unrestricted free agent, or Jordan Reed, unrestricted free agent.
For me, I'm going Kyle Juszczyk. I feel like, and nothing against Jordan Reed, but for a second tight end position, it's not that important because obviously the 49ers have George Kittle. They want something probably better than Ross Dwelley at the second tight end. I think Dwelley's fine in moderation, but I feel like you have an easier time via free agency or via the draft to find a second tight end. Kyle Juszczyk's not just a fullback. Kyle Juszczyk's a tight end. Kyle Juszczyk can play slot receiver. Like Kyle Juszczyk is calling him just a fullback is almost slanderous. He's almost an offensive weapon. I mean, my man's is a Pro Bowl quarterback. If you were taking into account minimum 1 snap on the season, Kyle Juszczyk is also a Pro Bowl quarterback. So nothing against Jordan Reed. I like the idea of Reed and Kittle, but I mean, for this offense to go, Kyle Juszczyk is probably top 3 in importance. So I don't want to understate the value of Kyle Juszczyk. Kyle Juszczyk is the pick there.
Yeah, I totally agree with Andrew. My whole stipulation, I've told a couple of people, though, it can't be anywhere near the number that they signed him to before. He was getting $6 million a year before. The 49ers were in a position where they had a bunch of money to spend. They didn't have a really, stellar reputation after the Tom Sula years and the Chip Kelly year. It was a time where they could afford to kind of throw a little extra money to get a guy like Juice to leave a very good organization in Baltimore and come to the 49ers. I would be more comfortable paying him around 4, 3. If you get him at like 3.5, I'm pretty sure Pat Ricard on the Ravens, the other perennial Pro Bowler at the fullback position, is making around that much. I'd give Juice a little more because he does do a little bit more. I'm totally in agreement with Andrew. Calling him a fullback just puts him in this box, which he isn't. He does so many things, and the biggest thing for me is that he makes it unpredictable when he's on the field. When the team's coming out and they're running personnel groupings when he's on the field, it makes it very difficult for defenses to really know what's coming. And when he can run those Y leaks, when he can run those plays where he's coming out of the backfield and he's running routes, and when he's throwing blocks for whoever's running behind him in the backfield, it adds an element to the offense where you do have kind of that element of surprise. It opens up the play action a little bit more. So he is very valuable. I just wouldn't be comfortable paying him what he got before. If he's on the same page and he's willing to take a little less, I would totally do it. I definitely agree too with the tight end thing. I think that they do have some good pieces. I like Ross Dwelley a lot. I don't think he's as talented as Jordan Reed. I think Jordan Reed obviously was once a top 5 tight end at the position. But from what I've seen this year, there's nothing that jumps out to me about Jordan Reed at this juncture where I would be willing to sacrifice the benefits of Kyle Juszczyk for Jordan Reed. Like, I would love, if he wants to come back at a discount too, that would be great. But if it's one or the other, I'm taking Juice 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I look at it. Juice hasn't really scored much touchdowns in his 49er tenure. He had 1 every single year before this season. This season, he's already at 6 total touchdowns. 4 receiving, 2 rushing. He had 0 rushing touchdowns as a 49er coming into the season. He now has 6. I agree that I would choose Juice before Jordan Reed because I feel like he's just more of an asset than Jordan Reed. He's a better blocker, and he has a better catch percentage than Jordan Reed. Usually when it's targeted to Juice, he's going to catch quite a bit of them. At this year, he's at 66.7 when targeted. Last year, he was at 83. The year before that, 73. So I look at it that aspect. Jordan, you tweeted about this, I believe, during the game Saturday. How many times does Jordan Reed get fed on third down and it does not get complete? 49ers are walking off the field and punting the ball away almost every time on third down. So, yeah, that's something I take into consideration as well because quarterback play hasn't been too great, but Brandon Ayuk's balling out and he's winning downfield. It's not all pitch passes. So, yeah, Jordan Reed should at least catch one of those third down passes, not be 0 for 12. So I look at it that aspect. I would rather keep Juszczyk, but it cannot be the same price that he signed for with the 49ers originally, just because next year, ideally, you're going to have Ayuk for 16 games. You're going to have Deebo Samuel for 16 games. You're going to have George Kittle for 16 games. I don't think if you're playing anywhere around $15 million or excuse me, $5 million or $4 million. Sorry, I was getting a couple texts and I was reading it and then I just shouted out 15 because I want to pay everybody. But yeah, if you're paying him $4 or $5 million, that's just too much for a guy who's probably gonna at least see a target or a carry twice in a game because you have to feed the other guys on the team. And then with Jason Verrett or K1, I'll go ahead and kick this one off. I'm going to take Jason Verrett just because he's going to be on the field more. I know the big knock on Verrett is he going to be available to play? Is he going to be healthy? Yeah, he put this year together, but what is it going to be like years down the line? I would imagine their money is probably going to be in the same market. I would assume maybe anywhere between $7 million. Since Verrett's an outside corner, he could may be able to see up to $10 million. I don't want to guess because it is way too early for all that. I like to see more on who gets cut just because people are trying to make salary cap. But I would go Verrett just because he's going to be on the field a whole lot more than a nickel corner is. And what he showed yesterday, that he could go one-on-one on an island with DeAndre Hopkins and win that matchup more than 50% of the time, sign me up. Get me Jason Verrett. I love K1. I think he is a difference maker when he is on the field because what he's able to do as far as a blitzer from the nickel corner position, outside of Jamal Adams, because he's another DB, outside of Jamal Adams, K1 is the best in the NFL. He is the best in the NFL coming off the edge as a secondary. So I would rather try to replace that than try to replace Jason Verrett.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I really want my cop-out answer to be just both. Like, just sign both of them. That's really, I think, the easiest answer. If I have to choose, I'm probably going Verrett. And I really like to assume health in these kind of conversations, assume that both players are playing 16 games. And I feel like finding a guy who could defend the outside like Jason Verrett's a hell of a lot harder to find a guy who can play in the slot. Because like Jamar Taylor, right? I know he tore his ACL. He might not be an option next year. He came in, stepped in for K1, and he was fine. And I don't want to take away from K1 because K1's one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. But if you're talking in how easy it is to replace the position, I would rather have to figure out a way to replace a slot cornerback than I would an outside cornerback. And I think that's really what my decision comes down to. So assuming health, I'm picking Verrett over K1.
You know, it's really tough because I think that it's very obvious how good Nick Bosa was. I'm not going to say that there was anybody more important to the defense in 2019 than him because it would just be a lie. He was that good. But I think you could make the argument number 2 would have been K1 in 2019. He was that good. He was very efficient. He was graded very highly. He did a very good job blocking down the slot. His numbers have tailed off a bit this year. But as we saw on Sunday, he is so good at just like Andrew said, he's so good at bringing that pressure as they've drifted, as they've had to adapt with the injuries to the D-line and they've shifted away from that, cover 3 and dropping 7 and rushing 4. They're having to get a little bit more creative with the blitzing and stuff. He's done a phenomenal job doing that. The issue that I have isn't as much about the skill set. I think they're both very skilled, and there isn't a defining talent between one or the other that would make me pick them. It's definitely the money for me. And the biggest thing is that K1 came here kind of on a discount. He signed a 3-year, $8 million deal.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm, I know Verrett did the same thing. He's here on, a 1 year, I think this year it's 1 year and 1.4 million, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's much easier to see a path to getting a guy who did sign that 1 year deal. You can kind of get him for a couple of years. You might have to pay at a little above market rate, given the fact that he has played so well this year. I don't see a path to them going to K1 and being like, hey, you've been one of the best slot corners in the league. You took a pay cut coming here from Cleveland for 3 years. We're going to ask you to do it again. The guy's 29 years old. This is probably his last chance to make big money. And the 49ers aren't the only team that values him. I think especially now with the way that the offenses are trending in the NFL, so many teams are going to more spread out formations. They're going out and running a lot more 11 personnel. They're running a lot more 3 and 4 wide receiver groupings. That slot corner position holds tremendous value. But at the end of the day, I ultimately am with you guys because Verrett's showing an ability to play man coverage and be sticky on those receivers and not let them burn him deep, burn him over the middle, consistently beat him. Everybody gets beat, but his play against Hopkins yesterday was just tremendous. And I think that he's demonstrated over the course of this season that he's somebody that can kind of take that mantelpiece from Richard Sherman. I'm very happy he was here for the past couple of years. I don't have the feeling that he's coming back. And he ultimately was, he got paid a lot of money in that same time frame Juszczyk did when they had a bunch of cap space to spend and they needed to make some splashes. But Sherman's cap hit was $13 million this year. With him gone, I do see a path to both of them coming back. But also, I could also see them allocating a lot of those resources that would have gone to Sherman at that same cap hit. They could sign Verrett to a deal that's, maybe 2 years, 17 million, something like that, where he's making 8.5, something around that ballpark. I think his play has definitely justified it. And he's still, I believe he's 28. If I recall, he's 28 or 29. But I would feel more comfortable locking up the guy, just like you said, who can lock down the outside. It also does depend. I know we're going to get into the defensive coordinator stuff. The scheme plays a huge role of importance for me, too. If they're ultimately bringing in somebody who's going to run more man coverage, give me Verrett, because Verrett's proven that he can play man coverage at a high level.
Right. So I'm going to save the defense coordinator talk for the next time. All of us are on a time limit here. We got some stuff going on. And plus, I know people want to watch Monday Night Football. Potential MVP candidate is currently playing, and that's Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So we'll just go ahead and wrap this up really quick. I wanted to throw Hyder and Tart in here mainly because we've seen Tarvarius Moore do some things at a high level, but we've also seen him mess up a little bit as far as his assignment not being in the right spot, not being in the right area, compared to Tart was a very, very safety. He was always in position, never really missed his assignment. And I think Kerry Hyder may have priced himself into that Tart range. He may have. I hope not. I really hope not. So that's why I wanted to throw these two in here, because I feel like Hyder has been a great silver lining for this team this year, especially without having Nick Bosa, as well as Tart. He's a safe safety, but he does play at such a high level when he is on the field. I know his injury concerns is a big issue on this, so that's probably why I'm going to lean towards Hyder and just say, hey, Moore, figure it the hell out this offseason, less blown assignments, and maybe that helps if they're not running so much single high safety. Maybe have some too high, and that could potentially help out more as well.
Yeah, and I think the 49ers really value their defensive line depth. I mean, you look at it when they come out of the usually what is the preseason and training camp and all that, 10 slots on their 53-man rosters dedicated to the defensive line. They like to have depth there. I think they feel comfortable with Tarvarius Moore. If he's a choice, I think safety's a position that you can address in the mid rounds of the draft and find some decent talent in there if you scout the right players. If you don't want to go Tarvarius Moore, if we're assuming that Tarvarius Moore is the starter, if Jaquiski Tart, I'm fine with picking Kerry Hyder because the 49ers really like having that depth. And this is what Kerry Hyder's doing on a defensive line by himself. without not a ton of help, nothing to take away from Deion Jordan or anybody like that. But what if they pay him whatever price he wants for a guy who had 7 sacks of a season, and then with Armstead moved to the inside and Nick Bosa back and Javon Kinlaw fully healthy, front four, maybe he takes another step. I don't know. So I think the unknown of Terry Hyder, including the amount of depth they like to have on that defensive line, I think Hyder's the choice. But it's pretty close to me because I could see them saying, yo, Moore's a little too green for us to throw into a starting position for a Super Bowl caliber team. So we're going to go with what we know and bring in Tart. But if I had to pick between the two, I feel like you can draft a safety better than you could do edge in the middle rounds. And so I'll pick Hyder over Tart.
So I'm actually very torn on this because, again, it to me, it matters so much about what the scheme is next year. If they are running some cover 4, some Tampa 2, some 2 high safety looks, I would much rather have Moore and Ward as the 2 safeties out there. So I would be totally okay with it. And then the other concern for me is Nick Bosa is phenomenal. He's a guy who can be an every down end. He's a guy that's a plus edge player. We know he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. But he's also very good against the run, so you can leave him out there on base downs. He's not somebody like a D Ford, who's coming in strictly for pass rushing situations. However, we do know that he had the ACL injury, and it was reported that he had cartilage damage as well. So I'm wondering how much they're going to look to lessen the load on him next year. And, initially I was going to go Tart, but I'm thinking about a situation where you wouldn't have to put Bosa out there, and you could still have Kerry Hyder on one edge and Eric Armstead on the other coming out in your base 4-3 on early downs where you're still not susceptible to the run, and you could also get pressure if the other team is throwing the ball. For me, it ultimately comes down to money. If it was one guy or the other strictly based on money, I would ultimately take the safety. I know D-line is what they prioritize. That's a very good point. Organizationally, they have put much more emphasis on it, but I think it's easier for an edge guy to come in and contribute day one, whereas with the defensive back, they're going to have to learn coverages. And as much as I love Tarvarius Moore, Moore's had a couple of angles, couple of plays where he's taken bad angles to ball carriers. He's been out of position in his coverage. So I think ultimately right away it would be easier to replace the defensive line play, but I also don't think that it would be at the same, you're not going to get a Kerry Hyder coming in out of the 6th round probably. It might happen. You never know. Max Crosby for the Raiders last year is a good example. They found a late round gem that was able to contribute. But I just think it's fundamentally from each position. It's hard to play any position in the NFL, but I think playing defensive back, especially with the way that they've been going with the scheme as of late, where it's been a lot of very mixed coverage. It's been a lot of stuff that's not just your simple cover 3 and a lot of the stuff they were running the year before. I'm going to go with Tart ultimately.
Yeah. And Max Crosby was a round 4 guy. The 49ers have a 4th round pick. They may also get a comp pick with Robert Saleh once he goes off and takes a head coaching job. So they have opportunities, but I think you just hit it on the head there saying, can you bank on replacing Hyder's production with taking a guy in the basically late 3rd, early 4th, because that's what that compensation would be for Saleh. No, you can't bank on that. So that's why I would lean Hyder, because I think Tarvarius Moore does have room to go, and I think he will get there. We got to see what happens. It's going to be a beautiful offseason because it's going to keep the 3 of us busy. Let them know where to find you, the both of you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Pasquini Andrew, Pasquini. Just find the tweet that said I didn't hate trading a 45 picks for Zach Wilson. That's me. And you could find me Wednesdays, Fridays for the Sprint Ride Option podcast on Jason Aponte's Twitter page or his YouTube page. So we'll be there.
You can find me at _cousin. I do a couple different podcasts. I do the 49th Hour podcast. And I also, I write for Webzone occasionally too. You can find me on 49ers Webzone. But for the most part, you can find me on my own Twitter, rattling off my thoughts.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in while there's Monday Night Football going on. So I'll let you go ahead and have a beer, have a dinner, do whatever you're doing and watch that. I appreciate the both of you coming on. I enjoyed it. I don't know how the hell we went to an hour so damn fast.
Time flies when you have fun, Leo. That's what I've always said.
49ers GM.
#49GM.